Hey guys, welcome to Facebook today. I have not done a live broadcast in a while, and I'm super excited to be doing a live broadcast today because I am kicking off for the next 5 days. My brand new Home CEO Life Planner is having its kickoff week, I guess, even though it kind of spans a weekend. So this is a product that I have been asking basically women for the last 4 years. I've kind of been surveying and asking questions and hearing the hearts of women and just kind of trying to find out what are the biggest struggles that we collectively have as women in today's world. And I think probably every generation has thought this, but it seems like I think a lot of the struggles we have are unique to us. You know, we've got the internet, we've got social media, and I think it just makes all the demands and the places that we fall short even all the more obvious to us than maybe it was before you had access to kind of peek into the lives of everybody else. And I think the demands are higher. We live in a fast-paced society where people can text you at any time, right? People can invade your space and your brain anytime because we have all of these alerts and we have all these different ways for people to get in touch with us. And so as a result, women are feeling exhausted and stressed out and like they're constantly running on a treadmill, and like no matter what they do, they can't seem to make it work. And then it seems like everybody else can make it work. So what is our problem? What is wrong with us that we can't seem to figure out how to make it so that life isn't so complicated? There has got to be an easier way. This is what I'm hearing from women. And so as I've gotten to know women more and I've been teaching and talking and all of this for the last 4 years, finally I have created a product that is going to, and that does, because I've had people testing this, it is a game changer for people, for women especially, because it's one place to keep everything, but it also is a way that I was able to kind of pick my brain. I'm a mom of 9. I also run a business from home, and I have a lot to keep straight. And as I've gotten older and as I've gotten more and more kids, as my family has grown, I've gotten to the point where I have to be much more, basically I have no choice but to be proactive with my life instead of reactive. And I think that is a learned skill, and there's a lot that goes into that skill. And so what is in this life planner is a lot of the stuff that helps me be proactive rather than reactive, because when you are reactive to what's going on every day, you're just automatically going to feel like you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off all the time. So what we're talking about today, so anyway, getting back to the Facebook Live and why I'm here, for the next 6 days, today and 5 days after today, I'm going to be giving you guys permission for 6 different things, and we're starting with permission to not be perfect today. And these are things that the binder all touches on, that the binder will all help you do away with. And so today we're talking about permission to not be perfect, and that's something we're going to talk about based on what's in the binder. So I'm just going to really quick give you a peek at how I use my binder. So this is the beginning of mine. Now I keep mine in a 3-ring binder, right? There's nothing special about it. I actually keep in the front of this binder are my time management sheets, which these are included if you go with the deluxe option or above for the life planner. You get the time management sheets, and these are something separate. So to me, it makes sense. I have my time management sheets first, and then comes the print-offs of everything from the life planner. So I just keep it in a 3-ring binder. It's nothing fancy, but that's what works well for me. So I'm going to talk through, we're talking about perfection today and having permission to not be perfect. So I think the society, I know the society we live in doesn't help us with the whole perfection thing that much. Because again, we feel like everybody else has it figured out. What's wrong with me that I don't have it figured out? And it doesn't really matter what it is, right? It's just when we struggle, we assume that nobody else is struggling, because it kind of looks that way on social media a lot. And it looks that way when you meet your friend for coffee. And when you see her kids, somehow they're just better behaved and all of that stuff. So it's okay not to be perfect, but let me say this. And this is where I want to talk to you about what's in here in the planner. Let me flip to one of the things in here. Okay, so the perfect morning routine. That's one of the things that's in here, right? The perfect morning routine. And I wanted to start with this because somebody on Facebook, where I was talking about this and showing a couple pictures, said that they did not like the fact that it said perfect, okay? So here's how I want to explain what perfect means in this context. We all have to have a place to start. I think it is totally okay to say, if I could map out my day, this is how it would be. If I could choose how my time would go, and if I could choose everything I would do today, this is what I would choose. And I think we all need to start with that. There's nothing wrong with starting with a structure, right? I think a lot of times for women who are feeling overwhelmed and exhausted, it's lack of structure often that is to blame. And I call it in my house controlled chaos. When people say, how do you do it with 9 kids? Like, how can you even manage to like still be standing up, right? I call it controlled chaos. I start with systems and structures. Those have to be at the base. And I know that I'm not going to be perfect. I know that my day is not going to unfold that way necessarily anytime, right? But I know that when I start with a system and when I start with a structure, I have to at least start there, because you have to have a skeleton. You have to have that structure in order to not feel like you're reacting to everything, right? If you don't have a basic structure, if you don't have something to start with, if you don't have a starting point, you have no structure. And so then you're just kind of going to go throughout your day flailing. So when I talk about creating a perfect morning routine or creating a perfect evening routine, this is what you need or want, what you're filling out. I've given you some of my ideas. The way it works in this binder is I've given you like what my morning routine looks like, and I've left you spots to fill in your own things. So you can add your things to mine, or I gave you a totally blank one. You might say, I don't want to do any of that stuff Jennifer talks about. I just want to do my own thing. But what I heard from women is really a lot of women kind of wanted a mixture of both. They wanted to see and they wanted to know, how do you do it? What works for you? I want to get some ideas from your life, because you're managing to hold things down, and that's what I feel like I lack. Give me some ideas. So the one sheet of the morning routine is the ideas, where I gave you what I do. Now you can use that, you can use part of it, or you can use none of it. That's why I gave you my perfect morning routine, my structure, for you to add on to if you choose, or I gave you a totally blank one so that you can have it either way, because it sounds like a lot of women, we're here to help each other, right? We're here to learn from each other. I have loved for the last 5 years, I've been broadcasting, and I've had a blog, right? The Intentional Mom, my blog. I've been communicating with women and trying to take the experiences that I've learned and the things that I've learned and the things that I do. I will gladly share them with other people in an effort that maybe it would be a little bit easier for you than it was for me. Because of course, whenever we figure things out, right, it's usually because we kind of had to learn what not to do first, right? But so I'm happy to share what works. So much of this planner is a lot of what works for me. Here's some ideas to get you started, or go with your own ideas, and here's where you can do that on things like the blank morning routine. Same thing like with the evening routine. I gave you guys my evening routine, and then I gave you a blank one to work on. Things for, I have a stay-at-home schedule for moms who stay at home. Like, what does a schedule look like during the day? Like, I struggle with knowing how to make a schedule. What does that look like? So I gave you how my schedule works and how our family schedule works. Now let me get back to what I'm talking about. And then I gave you a blank one to fill out, by the way, if you don't want to follow my schedule at all. But here's the thing, while I am making a schedule, right? That's not, like, if I can get half, I call it a good day if I can get 80% done of what I thought. Like a lot of these business models and these business groups and these business books that you and courses that you might take, a lot of them talk about if you can get 80% of your task list done, like that is what you should shoot for. You should never be shooting for 100% of anything that you come up with being structured, being followed. It's not humanly possible. And I think it's important to recognize that. In fact, one of the testers I had for this planner, that's what she said. She said she realized when she sat down and started working through this. In fact, It was when she was working through this worksheet here, the waking time worksheet, right? This is a worksheet that I walk you through where you can actually figure out the best time for you to wake up based on what you actually need to get done. A lot of times it's kind of like backwards thinking. A lot of what's in this planner and a lot of the way my brain works actually is backwards thinking. Like if this is what you want the outcome to be, how can I break that down to make that happen? That's just naturally kind of how my brain works. If this is the end result, then how do I get from here to there? And then I can easily connect the dots. My brain works very easily for me to be able to do that. And I realize that's a gift that I have. That is not something that comes naturally to a lot of people. But it's important to recognize that while I create this daily schedule for you, or you create one completely on your own if you choose to do it that way, it's important to recognize that that's just a starting point. Kids are going to get sick. You're going to get your neighbor who calls and needs you to go, help dig them out of the ditch. You're going to get, your meal plan didn't work for the day, or you ended up having to go to the store because you ran out of milk, or any numbers of things, right? With 11 people in my house, trust me, I know how it goes when life never goes the way that you have it scheduled. That's the important thing to recognize, and where the permission to not be perfect comes in is that you have to understand, I think we need as women to understand that it is to be expected that things aren't going to go exactly according to the schedule and exactly according to the plan. But what is the difference between being able to feel like you're not on a treadmill, to be able to feel like you're getting things done and the right things done? A lot of what I talk through here, and one of the options we have for this home life planner is the deluxe option, which has what is the Power 90 in it. And we're actually, that's like a power, think of it like a power planning session where I'm going to be guiding you through how to fill everything in this planner out. And we're going to take the time for you to actually fill it out. But during that session, I'm going to talk a lot about how these things came to be. And it's important that you understand that it's okay to not follow the structure exactly. And as you start to see kind of a lot of these different worksheets and how they work, I think you'll find the missing pieces. But I think what all of us struggle with pretty much on a daily or almost daily basis is that we feel like we're frustrated and not doing the right things. We feel like we're constantly being interrupted. That was something I talked about on Instagram yesterday, or maybe the day before. Constant interruptions. And we're being pulled in 1,000 different directions, and then we have to get back to where we started, and it's really hard to put something down and pick it back up. And there are ways to actually make that happen. That's a lot of what's in here. But the important thing to understand is that you have something to shoot for. You come up with the structure and you say, this is what I would like to happen, so that when things go haywire or things divert your attention temporarily, you can still come back and say, okay, this was still my plan for today. So where can I pick up the plan, right? Because it's just a constant, life is really just a constant setting aside the plan. But you have to have the ideal plan figured out first. So that with that, when you have a structure, when you have an ideal plan figured out, you can much more easily get diverted, set things aside, pick them back up without completely losing yourself, because you've got this structure to come back to. But it is important to recognize that I don't think any day of my life goes exactly according to the structure, but there's nothing wrong with the structure. And the structure is what's often missing. But it comes with the caveat of understanding that everything is not going to go according to plan, and that's okay. You have to know that going into it though, right? And that's what a lot of us are missing. A lot of us are missing that permission to have things not go perfectly. But the more we can recognize that and remember that when things start falling apart, when you have the structure, when things start falling apart, you can come back. But you also, through hearing me talk, probably a lot of times I've talked about this, that it is okay when it's not perfect. eventually we start to give ourselves that permission. It's sometimes we need to be reminded. I need to be reminded of it too. But knowing that we don't have to do it exactly this way, and that it's not, we don't live in a perfect world. It's not going to be able to be exactly that way, but we still have the structure in place, and we have learned, it's a learned skill to give ourselves the permission to not be perfect and to not check off every box and to not achieve absolutely everything on there. But the difference is when you've got a structure to work with and you're able to divert and come back and divert and come back, when you get to the end of the day and you start living your days that way, you'll find that you're much less exhausted, you're much less stressed out, you're much less frustrated by just all the ways that everything kind of went out the window, because you're able to look back and see, wow, I actually did come back and I got this done. I actually did come back and I got this done. And I actually did come back and I got this done. I actually got 3 or 4 things done on my list today, or I had 3 or 4 things go as I thought they would, or things that went according to plan. I'm happy with that, especially if you're someone who has not had a structure in the past. You'll find that actually having just a few days with a structure and then being able to look back and see what you had done, it becomes easier for you to give yourself that permission to not be perfect anymore. So I want to encourage you to know that when you're working on things and when you're creating a structure, when you're using this planner, and I'll put a link with this video as soon as I'm done where you can get yours. When you are working with a structure, it's also important to recognize that it is a structure. It is the ideal layout of your morning, of your evening, of how your cleaning schedule will work, of how your time blocks will work, of how early you'll get up in the morning, of what your morning's going to look like, of how you get, there's something in here, I'll show it to you, how this was something that women need to know all the time with kids, how to get things done with kids. That's something that people ask me that all the time, because I do have lots of kids and they are constantly interrupting, but it doesn't have to completely derail you. And there are some skills that actually can set you up to actually get some things done with kids. It just takes knowing a few different tricks. And so that's what this one is. But it's important to recognize that none of us can expect ourselves to be perfect. Other people certainly don't expect you to be perfect. And if they do, that's their issue, not yours. But the more you have a structure and the more you're able to actually look and reflect and see, you know what, I did get a few things done today, the easier it becomes for you to realize that you don't have to be perfect in order to be successful. You don't have to be perfect. I love to say, I don't even know who originally said it. It was not me, but there's something to be said for progress, not perfection, right? Any one thing that you get done in a day is progress. You're heading towards something. And so it's important, though, to remember that with every structure comes the permission that we must give ourselves to not be perfect, okay? So that's my talk for you today is I give you permission to not be perfect. You need to accept that, though. You need to accept the fact that, you know what, my day didn't go perfect, and that's okay. Like, that's the reality. And it totally changes how you feel about your day and how you feel about your life when you know ahead of time and you're constantly reminding yourself that the goal isn't perfection. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is just progress. And when you have structures in place, you can actually make that progress, which makes a huge difference. So I'll be back tomorrow and I'll give you permission for something else that's really important that we often don't give ourselves permission for enough, and that is permission to protect your time. So that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So I will see you then.